And we're going to move on to our first debate of the night. This is going to be pretty interesting. This is pretty based. Owen Jones, he's from the UK. He actually hosts a show on YouTube called Owen Jones. Now, he was a part of the Labour Party. We'll get into why he has decided to leave the Labour Party. So, there's a lot happening with Owen Jones. He is waking up to some things, and he is he's going off. He is going off. But he also actually had a debate on Sky News with Hen Mazig to discuss the war in Gaza. Let's hear it for Owen Jones. Guys, if you don't watch him, check out his YouTube channel. Particularly the more recent videos, because like I said, Owen has woken up to a lot of things, whether it's the Democratic Party, whether it's the Labour Party in the UK, and he has been pretty vocal, and Owen has some things to say. Let's get in.
Whatsoever. 40,000 Palestinians are likely to have been killed or more in Gaza because the official statistics exclude those buried under the rubble. Now, the point about Joe Biden and his position there, Joe Biden's hot air all the way through has been a defining feature of this conflict, so-called conflict, genocidal onslaught against the people of Gaza. He has armed and backed Israel as it has caused so much destruction. A large majority of Gaza's civilian infrastructure is now severely damaged or destroyed. So Gaza is now a different colour and texture when looked at from space, where around 13,000 plus children have died violent, horrible deaths, either with their buildings coming down on top of them or being burned and cooked slowly to death or suffocated or both at the same time. And that point, which I did think was editorialising on the part of your journalist, was that it was beyond any doubt or any reason that, it was completely unthinkable that the US could pull the plug on arms because that would then pose an existential threat to Israel. That's in Israel's court. Israel has decided to starve the people of Gaza, the fastest drop in the nutritional status of a population in recorded history, the most severe.
Let me pause just for a second. Did you notice how Hen Mazig, notice how he looked away when Owen talked about the starvation? Notice how he looked away?
Severe famine since World War II now beckons. You have people in the north at the moment who are starving to death and eating animal feed in order to live. As David Cameron, Foreign Secretary, not someone I normally quote, detailed in a letter which led, I would note, to the sacking of the Israeli spokesperson Elon Levy, which is probably why you don't have him on your news channel anymore, is because Elon Levy made false statements about aid trucks being allowed in, which then David Cameron went through and said that wasn't true. Israel had gone to great lengths to stop them coming in. The point I'm making is, Israel, all the way through this, has been razing civilian infrastructure to the ground. It has conducted the biggest killing of aid workers in recorded history. And the point I would make, and this is why I think there's a bit of journalistic malpractice which has defined this conflict, Israeli leaders and officials were very clear from the very beginning about what they were going to do. They didn't hide it. You don't have to go through leaked documents. You just have to listen to, for example, to Yoav Gallant, the defence minister who's in the war cabinet of three, who said 2 days after the atrocities committed by Hamas on the 7th of October, that they were going to cut off food, water, and all the essentials of life on the grounds they were fighting human animals. And then on the 9th of October, he declared he was lifting all restraints on soldiers. And a day later, he said he was lifting all restrictions on Israeli soldiers. We've now seen that, and the impunity that Israel enjoys from the West has led to aid workers who shared their coordinates on a pre-approved route with massive World Central Kitchen logos, who were chased from car to car with the drone until every single one was dead. And I'll tell you this, if that's true with those aid workers, Palestinians, ordinary Palestinians, don't have a chance. And Joe Biden has sat through all of this, wringing his hand occasionally whilst ensuring Israel has the arms to continue.
Let me give you a chance.
Let me come in and let him respond in just a second. But what I thought was really smart, what Owen did here, is that he didn't just talk about how the UK has been complicit in this as well, right? He's also calling out the Biden administration's being complicit in this genocide as well. But it is very obvious to me that when Owen walked into this debate, he showed up prepared. It was very clear to me that he did his research before he decided to walk into Sky News. He was just doing the damn thing, okay? So he was prepared. Now, let's see how Hen responds.
Well, I'm interested that there's a lot that I'm sure some of the phraseology you won't agree with, but quite
a lot of the facts as well.
But some of this is facts, isn't it? I mean, Gaza is being absolutely.
Are there no trucks going into Gaza? Is that what you're saying? There's no trucks with humanitarian aid. You're saying that 7 million tons of food today did not enter Gaza. Israel is lying about that.
I can answer that question very clearly. Israel has destroyed much of Gaza's domestic food production and agriculture. Yeah. The amount of food aid, as David Cameron has noted, is much less than before the 7th of October, when the need is much greater. And not only that, the roads have been trashed, okay, for a start. Police officers which guard those trucks have been deliberately targeted by Israel, with Joe Biden's own administration condemning Benjamin Netanyahu for doing that. Whether it comes to the infrastructure, or, for example, the ability to transport the aid around is impossible now. Right. So this is why the destruction of agriculture plus the inability to get the food.
So you see what Hen tried to do? He tried to say, are you saying that a truck didn't get into Gaza today? As if we're supposed to forget about everything that happened prior to the day that they had this debate. You know, it's just like they're trained liars. I'm just, look, we're going to get into the Norm Finkelstein and Dershowitz part 2 debate on Thursday, because I haven't made it through all of that yet. But we're going to get into that on Thursday, because you just see the trained lies and they all continue to say the same thing.
It's throwing a lot of hand.
And you know what? I do understand why this conflict raises a lot of emotions. I think we need to focus on reality. And I understand, especially when you are Jewish or Palestinian or Arab, why you feel so connected to this conflict and really being hurt and upset. I'm upset. My family, my friends, I lost friends in October 7th. I don't understand why you are so.
Because I object to genocide.
So do you see what he's saying? So Hen, let me show you how people show their whole ass. Okay. So Hen is basically telling Owen that he understands why he has an emotional attachment. Hen has an emotional attachment because he's Israeli. He said he knows people that he was lost on October 7th. He understands why Palestinians are emotional about it, why Arab community may be emotional about it. But then he points to Owen Jones and he says, I don't understand why you are emotional about it. So what Hen is actually telling you is that the rest of us should not have any type of compassion for humanity. You know, he's basically telling you, you have to be Jewish or Palestinian to actually have some type of compassion or emotional connection or any type of emotion about what is happening in Gaza. Ain't that a bitch? Let that sink in, folks. Let that sink in. How cold can you be?
So connected to this conflict and really being hurt and upset. I'm upset. My family, my friends, I lost friends in October 7th. I don't understand why you are so
because I object to genocide, because I'm a human being.
And of course it's not a genocide, because
I'm a human being. That's why.
Would you call every war a genocide?
So he responds and he says it's because he's a human being. Then he replies back and says, oh, of course it's not a genocide.
So what is a genocide?
Because you're seeing the deliberate attempt to starve a population to death, which Israel's own leaders said at the beginning of
I think let's
Israel is now on trial at the International Court of Justice.
And what did they say? Did they say it's a genocide?
So do you know how they, just quickly on that?
Well,
they can't do that at this stage.
Right, they can't do it. So why do you bring it up? Because that's what you do. That's what you've done this whole time.
Because they said it's plausible.
Pieces of ideas.
Let me pause. It is very clear to me that there is a hold on the ICJ, there is a hold on the UN, and I'm pretty sure that Zionists have that hold on those organizations. And I believe that is why the UN did not declare it as a genocide earlier today. But let's be very clear. Even if you do not agree with the act of war actually being complicit in this genocide or the reason for this genocide, you can at least point to the fact that there have been numerous attempts to get aid into Gaza to feed the Palestinian people, and Israel has blocked off entry for the aid to come in. They have had trucks deliver the aid and then start shooting at the people when they show up to try to get the food. You cannot deny that. So if you don't believe that Israel is trying to commit genocide via war, You can still point to the fact that Israel was trying to commit genocide via starvation. Now, Hen Mazik, he knows that.
They said it was a plausible case.
You make the International Court of Justice. You can both win that argument, all right? Both of you can win on the International Court.
Right.
No, they haven't said it's a genocide. Yes, they have said it's a
genocide yet. Just to get the facts right.
But you can say it's a genocide. The International Court of Justice can't. You can say that it's a genocide.
They can legally determine something, but I can.
Right.
A British guy in London would tell us it's a genocide in Gaza.
I want to address this question, though. Let's get away from the generalization. Let's talk specifically about what happened with these aid workers who were killed on the ground.
Yeah.
Now, it's a point that Mark Stone made. It's a point that I know you have referred to it and said it's revolting. But is it a reality that foreign aid workers present a much greater international challenge to the Israeli government than the deaths of tens of thousands of Palestinians?
Absolutely not. I think that every civilian casualty is terrible, and that's what Israel has been saying since the beginning of this war. I don't think that anyone in Israel, the difference between Hamas and Israel is that when civilians are killed in Gaza, Israelis are not going in the streets and celebrating it. We're not handing out sweets.
That's a damn lie. There have been a number of Israeli government officials that have made statements on video saying that all of them are Hamas. We actually have a representative in Congress who is Israeli, who actually was a part of the IDF, who said even the babies, he said this to Code Pink, said even the babies are also Hamas. So that is a damn lie. From day one, your officials with their big mouths and their cameras have revealed to the world who Israel really is and what they actually want and their intentions and how they feel about the Palestinian people. For everybody else watching, I'm going to keep it real with you 100%. If they feel that way about the Palestinian people, if you're black, how do you think they feel about you? And don't come to me and say, oh, there's Ethiopians and Israelis and they're there. The same Ethiopian Israeli women that the government sterilized against their will so they would not reproduce. They were trying to get rid of them too. They didn't want them there either. Ay, ay, ay.
No, but they seem a lot more bothered about the international reaction to these aid workers than they do about the continual death of Palestinian civilians.
I don't think so. I think that the reason that it was so condemned and so important for Israel to come out and condemn it is because it was a targeted attack. It wasn't collateral damage. It was a targeted attack, and Israel came out before the U.S. even woke up. It was in the night in the U.S., and Israel came out and said, this is a mistake. We've made a mistake. We're going to improve ourselves. We're going to try to do better in the future when we're fighting a war against an organization that is hiding itself among civilian population, building tunnels and shelters underground, and then putting the civilians above ground, hoping that Israel would attack those civilians.
How do you put the civilians above ground when the civilians already live above ground? Putting the civilians above ground, right? So when we talk about the West Bank, so their excuse, what's your excuse for kicking people out of their homes and building illegal settlements? What's Israel's excuse for a bomb in Lebanon and bomb in Syria? Who's next? They're going to come after Jordan next? Who's next? Who else are they going to come after and claim it's all Hamas?
And then having people in the West, going on to channels and defending them. That's the issue here. And there's one country. Let me just finish the one.
We'll come to you.
Okay. There's one country that has built shelters, bomb shelters, invested billions of dollars in defense system in protecting its civilians. And there's a terrorist organization that has done everything it can, building a channel of tunnels underground in Gaza that is like the London Underground to hide not civilians, to hide hostages, Israeli hostages, and Hamas terrorists and ammunition. That's the problem here, and that's I can't believe that we haven't seen this clearly.
Owen, I want
to Tia's point, since he keeps bringing up the tunnels again with the claims that Hamas was underground, yet you guys never went underground and got them. 100%.
I'll ask a question actually to both of you.
Well, I'd like to. Do I get to answer any of that? Or?
I'd like to move on. Which is this, Owen?
I don't think we can just have misinformation on national television that isn't corrected.
What are you saying is misinformation there?
Well, I mean, firstly, he accused me of defending Hamas, which I have to say, those smears might have worked once, but it just people watching this think you're desperate. the point about human shields,
that's great.
a brilliant piece of investigative journalism in Plus 972 magazine by the brilliant Israeli journalist Yuval Abraham revealed the use of artificial intelligence, a system called Lavender. And what that does is generate a whole load of low-level operatives generated by artificial intelligence with a collateral damage level per person of those targets of up to 20 civilians. The idea,
which we have to say, the IDF has said that it uses this for information purposes, that it has not used.
Well, 6 separate intelligence sources briefed this brilliant investigative Israeli journalist. Now, you can see what's happened there. What they do, according to this information, is they wait for those operatives to go home when they're in bed with their families there, and they blow them up. And they blow up their kids, and they blow up their families. Can you imagine Hamas was going around blowing up soldiers, Israeli soldiers, in their homes with their children?
Did that.
Now this is and you think that's unacceptable?
Okay.
I do.
The question
Israel is
I
doing
want-
that state sanctioned.
Said that.
The question-
I've said they've committed.
Let's have a reasonable.
You watch the atrocities and you challenge the authenticity.
Owen,
No, I didn't.
I want to ask you
No, I
both
didn't.
a question. Which
I
is
didn't
this.
do that.
If Hamas were to release the hostages tomorrow, what happens then?
Look at the West Bank. Look at the number of people who have been slaughtered in the West Bank since this.
That was an excellent point that he brought up, and I'm glad he brought that up, because that is an important point that you should mention to people if they say, well, if they release the hostages, what happens after that? Yeah, that's a good question for the state of Israel, because Hamas releases the hostages. Is that going to stop Israel from removing Palestinians from their homes in the West Bank? Is that going to make Israel change the laws that they have in the West Bank against the Palestinian people, the apartheid that they have? Are they going to change any of those things? Because here's the thing, as long as you continue to occupy people, and let's say they do go in and they completely destroy Hamas, right? Let's say that happens. Even after all of that, the people who have endured what they have endured during this time since October 7th will always remember that. So basically what Israel is actually doing, they are actually possibly creating another type of Hamas because of what they're doing to the people right now. These groups don't rise up out of nowhere. No one wakes up one day and says, I just think I'm just gonna, go out there and start taking shit and bust through and just that doesn't come out of nowhere. And when you have sat up there and you've occupied people for all these years and you've treated them like animals and you called them animals, you've imprisoned their people, you've imprisoned children. There have been stories that have been reported of people being abused in the jail in Israel. There's no formal process. There's no due process for the Palestinians that are captured and taken by the IDF. They're just captured just because they feel like it. There is no court system for them to attend, no trial. So that is a good question. What happens after all of this is said and done? Who is going to come in and make sure that Israel is not continue to take those homes in the West Bank? Who's going to step forward? Because the UN ain't shit. And you can tell them I said it. The UN isn't stepping forward to do anything. The ICJ isn't doing any damn thing, talking about get back to me 30 days later with a report. This ain't school. Israel is not in class, and they don't owe you a report card. So it is very clear what is happening here. It's very obvious. I don't know how much more people are going to put up with this.
Began last year alone, before the 7th of October, 240 Palestinian civilians, 40 of them children, were killed in the West Bank. And we were told that was a ceasefire. In the West Bank now, people are being driven from their homes and they're being slaughtered. The West Bank is not run by Hamas, it's run by Fatah, who put down their arms and accepted a peace process. What we're seeing in Gaza already, this idea of releasing the hostages, which I want. Taking those hostages was a severe war crime, a grave and unacceptable war crime. And the only way hostages have been released in any significant number is through ceasefire and prisoner swaps. That includes those prisoners who need to be released. And again, the information that's come out today of the treatment of these prisoners who are held without charge, with their handcuffed so much that they've been amputated, as well as the work by Save the Children, which is detailed how child detainees are sexually and physically abused.
Owen,
now, it's very important that we talk about this.
I want to give you to get a chance.
Yeah.
Same question. If the hostages were released, what do you think would happen?
I mean, the amount of passion that you have for Palestinian prisoners, but not for the Israelis, and this
I just called it. I said it was a war crime. I said it was a severe war crime,
but they did not describe in specific what the Israeli hostages are going through for 6 months.
Well, I'm
now.
asking,
and that's
if they were released,
and I just want.
They're going through the same type of starvation that the Israeli government is doing towards the Palestinian people. Because let's be clear, let's not pretend like the Israeli hostages just have some magic food somewhere. So when they decided to try to starve the Palestinian people, they were starving their own hostages too.
I just want to point it out because it's important, because we're seeing this campaign by yourself and others that are pushing those details that are not even true, that are widely contested by every news media and intelligence agency in the world. And you know, if you want to know what would happen if the hostages would be released, go back to October 6th. The reason that the hostages are there is because Hamas went into Israel, committed one of the worst massacres against Israeli civilians, and took innocents from their beds, babies. There's a baby in Gaza that Owen did not mention here, and that's the issue.
I haven't mentioned every war. I said it was a severe war crime. The difference between me and you is I condemn all war crimes.
Gentlemen, I'm going to cause a.
There's much more than that.
Yeah, so they continue to exaggerate, right? It's the worst thing that ever happened. Exaggeration. So Owen Jones is kind of going through a political transformation. Now, he wasn't like progressive, so to speak, or whatever, right? Like he didn't describe himself as a socialist or anything like that. Or I think he was more like maybe a dim socialist or whatever. But he's not like a Marxist or communist or anything like that. And for years, he was a part of the Labor Party. So something is happening with Owen Jones, and he did make this announcement. I think he's had enough. And I think what's happening in Gaza really set him off. He decided to leave the Labor Party. Listen to this.
I've always been a Labour guy. My great-granddad, who had his wages docked in the general strike a century ago, was a Labour councillor. So was my grandma. Her proudest achievement, stopping a family being evicted by their private landlords over Christmas. My parents even met at a Labour Party meeting. Romantic. On my 15th birthday, my mum bought me a Labour Party membership as a present. I know. What a loser. My cat's even named after Keir Hardie. He's the first leader of the Labour Party, whose picture proudly hangs on my wall. Well, at least that little guy's done the name proud. Now, I voted Labour under every single leader in the 21 years of my adult life. Spent years working for Labour MPs. I've campaigned for the party hundreds of times. I've done fundraiser after fundraiser for MPs on every wing of the party, organised countless mass canvasses across the country.
So this is someone who had this like deeply, this was deep in his family. Like, it's not like, like he was born with this. He was born with
Labour Party's been a big part of me. But today, I've quit. Felt pretty emotional. But you see, I can't support a Labour leadership defined by dishonesty, whose word you can't trust on anything, which lacks any vision, belief or principle, which is driven only for power for its own sake, and which will over and over again defend the interests of the rich over those whose lives are just getting harder and harder. And I can't support a party with a total lack of answers to the massive crises and injustice that define this country, which I fear, when their government comes crashing down under the weight of their own dishonesty and failures, will just pave the way for the far right. And I just can't support a party run by people who I think will dangerously abuse the huge power that they're going to get. And there is no way on earth I can support a leadership which refuses to condemn and which even justifies war crimes. The mass slaughter of approaching 40,000 Palestinians, many of them kids, toddlers, babies. You know what? What I really want is to end the war on hope. So, at the next election, what I think we should do is vote for the Green Party or an independent candidate who stands for things like asking the well-off to pay more tax so we can invest in and rebuild our bad country, our services and utilities being run by the public rather than these rip-off profiteers, but candidates who want radical action on everything from the housing crisis to poverty to the climate emergency, and you know what? Candidates who aren't complicit in war crimes. Now, that might mean, by the way, not just Green or independent candidates, but some of the surviving decent Labour candidates who believe in those things, that's if they're not booted out by then. Some of them already have been, and more will be, because if that's the sorts of things you believe in, Labour wants you crushed.
Does that sound familiar? Sounds like the Democratic Party, right? If you believe in those things, then eventually they're going to push you out, just like they did Cynthia McKinney, just like they did Dennis Kucinich. So he announced that he left the Labour Party. Like, he's not playing around. He's just like, look, I didn't had it. And he's telling people vote Green or vote independent. So even in the UK, you're seeing changes. You saw what happened with George Galloway, right? Running through the Workers' Party. You see how he was able to win. And I guess the prime minister in the UK just lost it. Like, he couldn't take it, right? So one of the things that's been questioned to Owen Jones recently is he concerned that he is now destroying his career? I want you to hear what he had to say about that.
For me, on Gaza, that is such a clarifying moment, which has changed me forever, because
That's my impression.
I cannot believe what I've seen in terms of how the world cannot be screaming at the top of its lungs against this crime, and watching people not only fail to do so but render themselves complicit has changed the way I look at the world. But they crossed the red line over Gaza. They crossed the red line, which in my view is unforgivable. I'll never forgive them, and that's why I think I'm more committed and unwavering in my politics, because I think over Gaza, when you have moral clarity, that gives you a toughness, because you think to yourself, it doesn't matter how much you get attacked. It doesn't matter how much insults and abuse you get. You know you're right on this. Some things are not black and white. But when you have moral clarity on something, in my view, which is mass murder, then it stops you from thinking to yourself, well, these doubts are gnawing at me. And I don't have any doubts. And if I destroy my career, then I don't care, because I know this is the right thing to do. That's the point.
Now, it's good that we actually have him on record saying that, because like a lot of people do care if they destroy their career. So Owen has I don't know, he is having this political transformation, which I think is really good. I think we need to see more of those things. Earl of Laurel says, invite Owen. I will try to reach out. I will try to find contact info for him. I need to invite him and George as well. If I can. But yeah, definitely.